to join us. We all know we're on a time frame. This shouldn't take too long this morning. We do have an hour and a half for questions. We will answer the questions at the end of the webinar. But first of all, this is about gap billing. We've all waited for this day to come. We've worked on this for about a year. This past year to get all the kinks worked out, so we're not going to cry wolf anymore. We're actually going to go live with this after today. And today we're going to explain how to use this report.
Audio issue recording has finished.
Thank you. See everybody here. Can y'all hear me well? Can you hear me? All right. So let's get started. So let's talk about gap billing. We're going to talk about the enhancements that we got upcoming for this fiscal year. That'll be done before the end of June, we hope. So we're going to talk about a gap billing overview. Let's kind of go over history. We have a lot of new folks that's come on board in the county since we started this system that don't know much about gap billing, what it is, how to do it. We'll kind of talk about the law in just a few minutes, and then we'll overview the report, and then we'll talk about how to run the report, read the report, how to bill, and then kind of some thoughts that we have going forward with this information we have, and then we'll talk about the enhancements at the end. So just a little overview. NCGS 105.330.32 is the gap billing part of the statute of the motor vehicle law, and it talks about for any months for which the vehicle was not taxed between the date of registration expired and the start of the current registered vehicle tax year, the vehicle is taxed as an unregistered vehicle. So what that means is if I have a renewal and it expired in November of 16, and I went into the tag office today, which is February, and for some reason, and it's supposed to be because I parked the vehicle, they're going to change my expiration date, and you'll see that in the VTS as an operation expiration date change. Then there would be a gap of missing months between November and February. So you'd actually count the months of December, January, and February would be the missing months. And what we've done is on this report we have captured those missing months. Also another scenario would be if my tag has been expired more than 12 months, DMV starts me over, gives me a new plate, we would capture those as well. So before VTS started, there was a county out there that was doing this, and there was a lot of value there, a lot of extra income that they had been able to gather, and they thought it would be a good thing to add to 105.330 going forward. So A talks about the value we're going to use. We will be modifying this part of the statute because we want to use the value that's on the current bill ID abstract that we're using that caused the gap to be created. So we need to be using that value. So this statute is going to be modified a little bit to accept that. Now it says it will be using the prior bill ID. We're going to use the current bill ID, and we'll show you what we mean when we talk about that in the report. In computing the tax, the assessor must use the tax rates and various taxing units in effect at the date the taxes are computed. So if we got a bill each month, we're going to use the taxing rates that apply there in that month, just like we do in the VTS. So whatever rates are in effect during that time, that's the rates we're going to use. We're not going to go backwards, we're just going to go forward with it. So the tax on the motor vehicle is a product of a fraction. So we all know the bills are for 12 months. So if my expiration was February of 18, my tax year would be March 1 of 17 through February 28th or 29th of 2018. So that'd be 12 months. And that's what we're going to use for the gap billing. So if I had a 12-month bill and I had 5 missing months, and there would be 5/12 of the billing value is what we would use. Okay. So D talks about how when the taxes are due, the taxes will be due on the first day of the second month following the month the notice was prepared. This follows along with the way the old statute was written and how we used to bill. Once you bill it, the person has 30 days to pay, and then the interest will start. So under gap billing, interest accrues as it does with the R&B taxes. You still get the 5% on the first month, and then interest accrues at a rate of 0.75% for each following month until the taxes is paid. And we know there could be probably some issue with that going forward. We know there are some folks that don't have their motor vehicle systems in place, and they don't bill motor vehicles, and they don't do the 5% interest anymore. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So what I want to do is I want to show you the report before I go into all the details about it. I'll answer questions at the end. Yes. So as we look at the report here, we tried to capture everything that we could so that you could bill it, because some folks, when we start out with this, we're going to have to bill them by hand or manually. Input this information. We try to give you the best information available, and then going forward you'll have this to be able to explain to the taxpayer how the gap was created, what bills were used, and how to reconcile it. Okay, so the first column has bill ID. You got your previous bill ID. This is the current year, as you can tell. Okay, and this bill was paid in the current month of December, and went back to this bill, which created the gap. As we go across, you have your VIN number, your vehicle descriptions, your owner status addresses, mailing addresses. We'll go into more detail about each column, but at the end you can see that it was billed from the months here. Okay, so when we did the old report, these months were wrong. It was calculating off a month. We couldn't actually get everything dialed in correctly, but now we've got the calculations are correct. And sure, you might want to double check them to make sure. We have checked a lot of these to make sure they do match up, so that it should be calculating correctly. Let's just talk about the parameters of the report. Their parameters are for transaction date, and how this report will be run, and we'll talk about how to bill these. We're going to ask you folks to go forward with this. So it's February. It's the beginning of a new year, calendar year, and we got the report done pretty much in time for this, so people could go forward with the bill. And we don't want you going backwards. The report will only pull for the current bill year abstract. So if you go in today and you're going to run transaction dates, it's only going to pull for that current year. It's not going to go back to 2015, 2014, 2013. Okay, you'd have to go back, way back in time. We don't want you doing that. Some of these folks may have sold the vehicle, so it was our idea just to go forward with this since we have it correct, and not to try to go backwards in time. So we want you to start with the January billing cycle. So here the parameters are by transaction date. You just use those. You just want to do this probably about once a month to run this report. It shouldn't change at all. So pretty simple on the parameters. Here's all the column definitions. We have the bill ID, which is the current paid bill ID for the vehicle that has the missing tax months. So this is the most recent bill. We know this person has this vehicle. They just purchased a registration and paid the tax in the last month. So we're pretty sure, that's why we want to go forward. We're pretty sure we know that person has that vehicle. If you try to run this last year, that person may have sold that vehicle. So it's just hard to collect on motor vehicle tax when someone does not have the vehicle anymore. So it's better just to go forward. So that's what that current paid bill ID is for. We have the previous bill ID. The next column. That either could be a paid renewal or an unpaid renewal. So we kind of have two scenarios here. We could have an unpaid bill to a paid bill and a paid bill to a paid bill. Okay, so you're going to have different kinds of gaps. You're going to have more than 12 months. You're going to have less than 12 months. So when you're looking at the report and the customer says, the citizen says, hey, why do you charge me for this? You can actually show them on the report and pick the two abstracts out in the system that created the gap. Okay, so that's why we have the bill ID and then the previous bill ID. So you know exactly what to tell the customer. The next columns are used to. You got your vehicle description columns, your VIN number, description of the year, make, and model and body type, your plate number, the plate expiration date, and you got your owner name, site addresses, mailing addresses, and then we have the vehicle value. That's the current, which is in the first column. Bill ID is vehicle value, and then you have the gap billing value, which would be a product of however many months there were times 1/12 of the vehicle value. Okay, so if you had 24 months, we'd multiply it times 1/12. We've created that calculation already for you so that you wouldn't have any errors trying to come up with the current value for the gap billing. And then we have the bill, the end bill renewal type. It describes the type of renewal, whether it was a renewal or issuance or LRP. And then we have the number of months skipped. Yes, we use that number of months skipped times 1/12 of the vehicle value to get the gap billing value. So we'll just kind of go through the column heads here. Like I said, the bill ID refers to the most current paid bill in the VTS. And then the previous bill ID is the prior bill, which creates the gap between it and the bill ID. So we have our current bill, and it goes back, as you can see, there's 2013, 2015, and 2014 bills we're bouncing off of. The old report looked the other way. It looked from backwards to forwards, which we didn't think was a good way to do this because you never know when someone's going to renew a tag, and you have to keep looking backwards to look forward. So now we're taking the current bill ID and looking at the old bill. These are pretty much standard things on any of our reports for the vehicle or information and bill ID, expiration for the current plate. Like I said, you got your VIN, vehicle description. You may have to use these to build into your bill. And we have our situs and our mailing address. We know that you're going to need both of these. So you know, the situs address can differ from the mailing address. That's why we put both of these on the report. And then we have our bill ID value, our gap billing value, and our renewal type, plus the month skips. These are the last four columns on the report. So you see to the first one on the left, it's a 12-month value from the bill ID in the column 1. Then we take that gap billing value as a fractional value of the current bill ID multiplied the month skipped. So we're going to take the 4330 divided by 12 times the month skipped, gives us the 5,051.67 for our value. And the type of renewal is processed. You can see that was an issuance. It would be an issuance because it's more than 12 months. Sometimes you could have an issuance where it's less than 12 months. The customer could have turned in a plate or something. And then we have our month skipped between the bill ID and the previous bill ID. Like I said, we'll answer your questions at the end if you got any questions about the information. We did run some of these reports, not just picking any counties. We just kind of went for a small, kind of couple medium-sized counties and then a large county. And these are only county values here. This does, and county calculations. This does not incorporate any city taxes or municipal fees or fire district taxes. But Terrell had 22 records in December. Watauga had 137. You got Rowan had 606. And then you got Wake, who had 1,191 records. So you can tell there is some some information out there. There are some of these that are being skipped, and there is a lot of value out there. And although $397 is not much, it does add up over time. I mean, so, and it is part of the statute. We are required by law to bill these things. Now we understand that you do have minimum billing values in your business practice, and you can still incorporate that into this. But here's just some of the numbers. So one of the questions that I get a lot, and some of our folks get a lot, is how do we bill these? Well, they weren't intended to be a discovery bill. They were intended to be billed somewhat like your old motor vehicle bills. You're supposed to need to do them every month. They have the 5% interest just like the old system did prior to the VTS, and then they had the 0.75%. So we know there are counties out there that did not maintain their motor vehicle system after the VTS was instituted. And we understand you don't have those, but we really don't. Your discovery bills do not calculate like a month bill like your old motor vehicle taxes did. They don't accrue every month. You do a discovery bill, the interest doesn't start till January the 5th. And that's not really the way these are supposed to be billed. We understand that, but at some point in time you need to fix your systems where these interest calculates correctly. Now there are some folks that still maintain their old motor vehicle system and can bill through that, and it will calculate the interest correctly. Also, if we have bills that are 12 months or more and you charge municipal fees, then those municipal fees would apply in this gap billing scenario. So anything under less than 12 months, we would not feel like we get a fee. It need to be the 12-month fee. Anything that's 2 years, you'll see some out there that have 2 years of gap. Those will get 2 fees. So, and remember, it's always the rate that applies at the time. So if the fee's $30, now it's $30 times 2. So going forward with the gap billing, we do have a couple of things in the works. One, the short term, is one of the enhancements that we have for the folks that have maintained their old billing systems. We are going to create a file that's formatted just like the old DMV file, and you can load that directly into your old motor vehicle system, your legacy system, and bill that way. This will not help the folks unless they have some upgrade to their system that do not have an old motor vehicle system to load that file. But this is coming this year. That was the best thing we could do in the short term to help some of these folks make it an automated process. And in the long term, we're thinking of doing a statewide billing. Bill it from the VTS, figure out how to collect it in the VTS. Now the DMV wouldn't collect it. They're only required to collect registered motor vehicle taxes. But figure out a way for counties to collect through an application through the VTS or through their old system. There's a couple of scenarios we could go with that. But there's a long-term goal to creating a billing file from the state level, which we will take to user groups and speak with certain folks about doing that. That would be some incurred costs there to upgrade the system, but it would create the uniformity that everybody would be billing and collecting the gap bills. I just want to run through the enhancements pretty quick, give you an overview of what's coming forward, and then we will entertain the questions. I'm sure some of you do have plenty of questions. So right now we currently have interest refunds that when DMV or the counties feel the citizens should not have paid, DMV is the authority on this, but DMV decided to customer should have not paid interest, we're required to refund that interest, but we're having to do this as a manual process. They're refunding their interest, and then we're refunding our interest, and it's outside the VTS system, which is not appropriate. We don't feel that should be happening. We've been asking for this process for about 2 years now, maybe 3. Doesn't make sense for them to send a refund check for $2 and the county send a refund check for $5 or $6. It's not cost effective. It's not good for the citizen. We are making this automated. Hopefully we'll have this in production by the middle of the year. So counties this will be able to be tracked in the system. You won't have to worry about giving it to finance and billing through finance. And we'll be able to track this and make it an automated process. One of the big things, the second item here, is the VTS training. We get several questions about the training. We know we have counties that have new users and did not get to go to any of the initial training. We are creating a training environment. The problems we were having when we were doing training is our test data was not set up in conjunction with DMV, so some of the applications didn't work as they did when we did the initial training because we had a different environment. So we are creating an environment that kind of mimics what we did in the beginning, because that was some pretty good training there, and we hope to have that enhancement done by the end of the fiscal year so we can begin training in the fall. And we expect, when we first do it, we'll probably be pretty intense on doing some training and then level that out. We may do it 4 times a year for a while and then kind of back down once we get everybody up to speed. Now, if you do have county users that are not experienced and need some help, we are glad to come out and help. You just let us know. We spend all day and go over some things and make sure everybody's on the same page. We have a next one is the fixed format for the gap billing, which I mentioned just a few minutes ago. That'll help with the counties that have their old legacy system. They can load the billing file in and bill them quickly and automated instead of trying to do it by hand. The TR1 vehicle value report, we really don't have a report in the VTS that gives us the TR1 information. We're also making this report so you guys can pull your values for your budget. We're also going to break the report down so you can allocate back to the budget year, the people that want to do that, summarize everything, use your adjustment refunds from the net distribution report. So we're going to kind of give you, it's a big report. We're really talking about making sure the performance works on it. And it should come out sometime, I hope, in the next 3 months. That's probably one of the last enhancements we'll have because our TR1 information is usually a calendar year type thing. We know a lot of you like to have something for the fiscal year. We're going to give you that ability in this application, but it won't be out before the end of the fiscal year probably. So prorate unpaid LRP taxes. The user group and the counties, wanted to prorate unpaid LRP. Some of you did. We're going to create that ability in the VTS. This will allow the citizen to go pay for the months that they had the tag instead of paying the entire bill and then waiting on a refund for a couple of months. So this will be up to the county whether to do this because you're not guaranteed the citizen's going to walk down and pay it. I mean, there's always that problem there. It could happen. But this will give you the ability if the customer owes $500 and they only need to pay $250. You can narrow it down to $250 and they can go pay it and move on. You don't have to provide the refund. We're working the queues. We're going to allow the vehicle value lookup to be used while in the work queue. So that capability is not. You have to go out of what you're working in to use the value lookup. We're going to put that in the queue so you can use it. And we'll demonstrate once we have that go live. We may have something like this. We'll definitely put out tutorials on anything that we do that are an application change. And hopefully some of these will kind of come out together and we can talk about how to use them. Add the title date to the exclusion report. A lot of users wanted to add this to the exclusion report to be able to use the depreciation schedule on the trailers to know when the vehicle was purchased, was a trailer, a vehicle, farm truck, anything like that. So that will be added to the report. Then we have the print R&B tax receipt. That is the top of the list priority right here, even though I've got near the bottom. That is the first thing we're going to have done. I expect it to be done sometime this month. I'm not sure when the date is, so with our DMV portal being delayed, this will give the counties an option to be able to print the receipt if the customer's in your office, and you can give them the information. They call up on the phone, please give them the tax information. That's really all they're looking for. If they need a detailed receipt from DMV, then have them call the 1779 number. But you know, the most thing is to help the citizen get what they need and not pass them on to either. A lot of folks get passed on to our office, a lot of folks get passed on to DMV, and we know the counties can give better customer service. Even though we do have the hotline, they can give better customer service than DMV can when providing the tax information.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we did add a disclaimer to the receipt that notifies the taxpayer that this is just taxes paid only. If they need a detailed receipt of all fees, that they would have to contact the DMV, call it 1779 number. So we did add that disclaimer.
And then the last one's purge unnecessary historical data. As you know, as time goes on, the system gets filled up with a lot of data that shouldn't be there, a lot of voided abstracts that are not paid. We see a lot of bills that are created by web service calls through issuance services, and we're going to be getting rid of those. We're coming up with the criteria of that, and we will be removing some of that off the system just to, you know, always help performance. So if you have questions, that's pretty much the end of the webinar type. You know, we're going to be able to answer your questions, go back and explain anything that you want to know.
I would like to say that I think Travis mentioned that I would like to these enhancements currently, it is they have a projected date of all being completed by June the 30th. So we will keep you updated and have webinars or notices as they become available.
So the first question is, what if there are more than 12-month gap, say 15 months, do we still bill for those beyond 12? Yes. It's a gap. Anything beyond 12, anything beyond 1 and beyond is, you know, I know some counties have a threshold. They may have a $5 threshold they don't bill for. Well, you don't have to send out a bill. That's your business practice. But anything that's created a gap that's on this report is billable. Can the LPA office be aware of the gap billing so they can give the taxpayers a heads up that they'll be getting the bill in the mail? Well, we will inform them to put out something to their LPAs, but as you know, there's always an information gap. And I think once this is instituted, we may see less gaps being created because they shouldn't be changing the date on a lot of these scenarios. So yes, we will tell them, but we're pretty much more out in front of things than they are. So we'll just do the best we can on that. We always just try to communicate with the citizen what the deal is, and if you have communications with your LPA, you know, please contact them if you can. But we will be letting them know. Travis, seeing the bill, seeing that we can now create the gap billing, will we be able to block the tag for the ones that have not paid the gap? No, you will not be able to use your gap, your block for gap billing. The blocks are no more in effect. Those are really on registered motor vehicles, and that went away. And you'll have to use your collection remedies that apply garnishments, anything your collector could use. Expected timeline for fixed format file for gap billing.
by June 30th.
It'll be by June 30th. We know
just don't
that.
have a specific date.
We don't have a specific, we do not have a date right now. Well, bills created under the gap billing process will be able to be collected through enforcement measures if the tax, yes, they will be able to be collected under enforcement measures. Same questions next. When LRP taxes can be prorated, will there be a consequence for not paying these to DMV? Will they not be able to obtain another plate for another vehicle until paid? Well, the vehicle needs to be sold before you can even prorate, and I would say no. But our goal is with these LRPs, and we've been working on this, is for DMV to collect the money because they are creating a bill. The renewals are invitations. And our standpoint is the LRP is a bill, and it is due, and they're supposed to go out and collect it. Now, they are going to be sending out a letter here once that LRP goes expired. They're going to send out a letter and say, hey, you owe these property taxes. And they're not going to put a block on the services yet, but that's our goal, is for them to either put a block on the service or a block on that vehicle where you couldn't sell that vehicle until the taxes were paid. They have the mechanism for that. Their kickback is how do we collect the money. And I know how they can collect the money. They just don't like my answer. So anyway, that's where we're going with that. We want for them to collect the LRP money. When it goes unpaid, they should, when it expires, they should block that registration. We can get the gap report right now. Yes, you can get the gap report right now, and that's a good question. The gap report is in production. It's been there for a month. We've been keeping our hats on our head and keeping our mouths quiet. There are some folks that know it's out there because they like to look around in the system, but it is in the system. The problem with the gap report, it's not a big problem. It's just when can I run it? As you know, a lot of times we get on there in the day, the finance report runs later in the day. Sometimes we have trouble pulling the assessed value report. Those are really big reports. But we have moved the gap report up in front of all those reports, except for the finance. So probably around 2 o'clock, 2:30 every day, that report should be available for you to run. But really, this is a monthly report. You're going to bill by the month. So you only need to really pull it once a month, okay, and do your billing. So it is out there. So do you recommend this being one of those reports that we check monthly? Yes, that's the way the law is designed for you to bill monthly on this. This should not be a yearly bill, a 6-month billing, or 3-month. This should be a once-a-month thing for your county. Because the thing about it is here, that customer has the vehicle. You know they have the vehicle because they just bought a tag for it the prior month. You want to go after it as fast as you can. Okay? The longer you wait, the more time goes away. They can get rid of that vehicle. You know, people do things with cars all the time. If an LRP is not paid, can we then go do a gap bill for the amount the actual months used of the LRP? The LRP bill will not be on the gap report. We do not feel under the statute it falls under the criteria for this because it is a bill in the VTS, and DMV has created that bill by collecting a registration for it, and they should be collecting that. And we have hounded that to the Change Control Board and DMV, and we still will. We don't think that going after the unpaid LRP is the way to go. If we say we can do that, then they're not going to try to do any enforced collection on that, and we think those should be collected on. What dates do we use to pull it? You're going to use by month. You're going to use the first day of the month and the last day of the month. And it should pull everything that happened in those transaction dates. So can we use enforced collections on bills that we create for value differences? I would say if it's a real big understatement of value, you can go after the value. Now, there are no collection remedies on an R&B bill. It could be argued that you couldn't collect those. You got any thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, technically, I think, there's no provision to, unless you go on 105-394 and use that to try to collect that, but there's no provision to use collection remedies on registered motor vehicles. I think it is something we probably should take a look at, maybe amending the statute so when something gets billed incorrectly within registered motor vehicles, that the counties have ability to rebill it and use collection remedies. That's something we need to discuss.
Yeah, we have had this discussion before. I think Cumberland County has brought this up to us before, because there are some mistakes made by DMV that cause the value to be well understated. One of the things with amending that is the LRP. So we're kind of trying to get the LRP situation under control and then address this understatement of value. If we pull on March 1, would the due date be April 1st? Well, if you created the bill in March, the due date would be April 1, and you got 30 days to pay from the due date, and then your interest would start in May. May 1 would be the first 5% interest. Will we receive notification when the fixed format file is available? Yes, definitely. We will probably pull in some of the companies, the software vendors, and make sure it works with everybody before we just throw it out there. So we have, that's a big thing, Farragut here is using their system to check it, because they loaded the old files. So once we get ready, we're probably going to pull the software vendors in as well to make sure everything works. I did talk to a different software vendor to make sure, on how to do some of this, and this was kind of their way to go about it, so that everybody that did manage their legacy system didn't have to change. But yes, we will be notifying everybody about the fixed file format. I think the question is, if the file upload is ready to be used, if so, where do we access it? I'm not sure about the question, but the fixed format file is not there. It is an enhancement. Okay, that's our short-term goal, is to give counties that enhancement. So it will be done by June the 30th. Hopefully sooner, but that's the drop dead date. That's our enhancements have to be done by then. We always verify the value. What do we do if the value is different than the value on the report? Well, the value on the report is what they got billed on and what they paid on. The gap billing value will differ from the billing value unless it's 12 months exactly. Those could be exactly the same. So if you think the value should be higher on the report, that's up to you to defend that. But really, the gap billing value is a fraction of what was there on the initial bill. So I don't know if you can use, if you want to change the value, you're going to have to defend that.
I would say if you start using this report and you find somewhere you think the value is not correct on the gap billing report, that you send it to us and let us look at it and tell us why you think it's not correct.
I think one of the reasons she's saying is it was undervalued to begin with.
Right, I understand, but I don't think you go back and change that once they've already been billed on that.
That's correct. Yeah. You can't change the value once they pay, but what month do we start? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, what month do we start billing from the gap?
Today is the go live date right here. I mean, as soon as I stop talking, that's what we're going to talk about. Today is you can start right now. We're going to say you go from January 1, 2017 going forward billing. Do not go back past that date. We do not recommend it. The report will pull for that, but that's up to you, the customer. We want everybody to start January 1, 17 to January 31st, 17 will be the first month, and go forward.
If you if you pull this report today after you finish with the webinar and you have questions, we'll be available today, and we're doing another webinar at 2, and you can sign back on, and if you have questions from looking at the report, you can ask them at that time. So we'll be here to help.
Says, can DOR provide a cover letter be mailed to the taxpayer explaining why they're receiving the gap bill? We can give you some kind of generic letter. It won't be on our letterhead. It'll be on county letterhead. That's why they're using it. We can give you kind of a mock-up of what we think should be on there. Because of the gap, should they be billed as a registered motor vehicle or personal property? Well, this is a gap billing. So it is a personal property bill. It's not billed just like regular personal property would be. The interest dates are different. There's all kinds of different aspects of it, but it is it's taxed as an unregistered motor vehicle, which would technically be a personal property example, but the interest accrues differently. Is there anything in the process to get the daily queue pending refunds processed? That's for a different time. If you want to email us about that, that'll be fine. But yes, we are working on that with DMV. DMV has come up with a process to fix those. So if you want to tell us about it, that's fine. Does the law require us to notify the vehicle owner of the appraised value, the gap billing value, or both? The law says to create the value off of the January 1 value. It says of the prior year billed value, but really it's going to say the current year billed value. So you can put, the report's going to have the months and how much value to create if we use the fixed file format. But really the value that should be on the report would be the billing value that you used on your bill, right?
I think so.
He's saying, should you put the...
Should you notify with both values? I would probably just provide them with the value they're being billed, because I think if you provide them with the value of the first bill and you're showing the gap, I think it may create a lot of questions. But I don't think that piece is mandated by statute, whether you have to show both values. I think if you just show the actual gap values, that's all you're required to show on there.
The reason we put both values on the report is to make sure you could explain to the customer what happened, where the information came from, and how we got to what we got that amount. Please definitely provide the general letter.
Same thing. We'll definitely put something out on the portal, some recommended verbiage on what the gap billing is and why they're receiving it.
I think one thing on your old vehicle bill that said registered motor vehicles, they're going to say unregistered motor vehicle now. That's one thing definitely needs to change. I don't think much of the other verbiage would change a whole lot, other than we may quote the statute that these fall under on the bill. We'll talk about that. If you want to send us a copy of your old motor vehicle bill, that would be great. Yes, we will put the generic letter on the portal, and we will send it out over the listserv. Okay, just so everybody has it, and we'll send it to the assessors. If the gap report is pulled and no data comes out, does that mean there were no gaps in the month? Well, if you're trying to pull it right now, you're not going to get any data, because I just probably said it won't be updated till about 2:30 today. I would probably say if you have no gaps, probably nobody bought a tag in your county that month. I have not ran a report. I've ran in all 100 counties and somebody had a gap. I would be surprised if we did not have a gap in your county.
Always, as Travis said earlier, I will always run this report late in the afternoon, maybe around 2:30, 3 o'clock.
If you have trouble with it and you really want to verify, if you say that there's no data and you try to pull it several times, just please contact us and let us look into it. Okay? What if we have encouraged taxpayers to list untagged vehicles on the personal property listing form and then they show up on the gap report? Well, that means they registered the motor vehicle. They show up on the gap report. We understand it's always a tough test to get people to list their unregistered motor vehicles and try to track those down, but once they fall on the gap report, they've had it registered twice or at least gotten a renewal, and then it went unregistered for a while, and then they paid and got one. So you're going to capture those months that they weren't registered. So if they were paying as an unregistered vehicle, and they listed this year, and they bought a tag after that, it's our recommendation is to release the bill that you have in your system, and because they've already paid one bill. And that's what the law says. Yep. So it is known there's an issue with utility trailer values, and soon they appear on the report. How will these values be handled? We provide the sales price for these if available. Well, the value that you used at the time they purchase a tag, and you'll be able to look at the abstract and tell whether it's a sale price or not. It would be our recommendation that this person paid on that value. If you feel you need to change the value, that's on the county. The counties are required, they're the ones, the owners of the value. The assessor is the person who's responsible for the values for every vehicle. When it comes down to the bottom line, that person got a bill, and that's the value on it. So if you change the value on this gap billing report, you got to be able to defend why you did. There's nowhere in the statutes that tells us we're going to use the value from the bill that was most currently paid and use that billing year value, and that's what they paid on when they bought the tag. So there's always a variable there on the value. It could have been too high, it could have been too low, but yet you have to defend it. The county has to do that. So I see that's pretty much all the questions we've had so far. We'll stay on the line for a few more minutes. I think we had this till 12 o'clock. We didn't figure it would last till 12 o'clock. It's not a lot of information. It's just how to do it, how to run it. If you have questions, we will be available tomorrow to help folks. We have another question. If there has been a value adjustment on the bill, will it calculate using that amount or the original amount? It will use the original amount. Now, if you did a value adjustment prior to payment, it will pull the value they paid on. So if you run these, it's highly unusual the customer's going to come in that quick, but they could. There's always anything that could happen. If somebody came in and did a value adjustment, most of these are going to be issuances where the customer changed the expiration operation date on the fly. So I don't see a lot of value adjustments prior to it, but there could be afterwards. But they're going to, whatever they paid on is what's going to show up on this report. (105-330.5A1) requires the appraised value of the vehicle to be printed on the notice. Should we also print the gap billing value? That's the value they're getting billed on. That's the value we would print. That's the value you're actually going to use. You know, maybe 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago, there was a time when there were some apportioned tags were not staggered, and they went from annual to staggered. So counties billed on 8 months, 15 months, whatever, and that calculation was incorporated in the system. What printed on that bill was what they were billed on. So, you know, we can put we also have the number of months that'll be in the fixed file format. You may want to put the number of months billed. what if they come in and say the motor vehicle is blown and they were repairing? What would we need to change in the value? There's nothing to change in the value. They had it fixed. They're driving it now. So they repaired the vehicle. That's what you would ask if you went out today and someone had a wrecked vehicle and they damaged it, and then you ask them, are you going to have this repaired? Are you going to have this repaired? So if not, so if they repaired the vehicle and they're able to drive it, then they've done something. So there would not be a value adjustment here. Now, if you went in and done a value adjustment, you may need to do something, but I don't see where once they bought the tag, they just bought it a month ago. So the months prior to that, if it was parked, well, they had it fixed, so they shouldn't get any adjustments for that. Gap billing value is not the appraised value. It is the appraised value times the number. I agree, it is the value times the number of months. But when you were billing those apportioned vehicles, that's the same thing you were doing back then. We were putting the value on there of how much they were being billed for how many months. So you know, and earlier you stated 330.5, that only administers to registered motor vehicles. That does not apply to the gap billing, 330.3. So we'll go back and collectively think about it again, but as right now, we're pretty much the gap billing value. That's what they're being billed on. Whether it's less than 12 months. So if you've had a bill that was 5 months and you put a 12-month value on it, it's just hard to explain. So that's why we have the detailed report that lets you know what the gap billing value was and the billing value.
Differently.
So Greg, we're just kind of looking at the statute here. In 105-330.5A, if that's requirements for a registered motor vehicle, but C kind of leaves it open. So we're saying go with the gap billing value as an unregistered vehicle. So C allows the county to do whatever they feel like needs to be on the bill. It's our opinion, you can put whatever you want on that bill. You can put both values. You can put the annual value from the current bill ID, or you can put the gap billing value. It doesn't. The requirements are kind of open there. Mark, could you clarify your question?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the collection remedies it would be the same for gap billing as it would for an unregistered motor vehicle or any property tax right now that you would go after. For registered motor vehicles, DMV is the collection authority, so yeah, we're not. Those haven't changed. The appeal period on the gap is 30 days from the due date. When they get the bill, it would be 30 days from the due date. Wouldn't be 30. Has any county already developed a bill to use for the gap billing that they would be willing to share? That might be something you want to put out on the listserv. I haven't heard of anybody yet that has. We've been crying wolf for a while on this one, so we really knuckled down in the last 6-7 months and got this thing done. So I'm sure a lot of counties just been kind of holding off, making sure we got it done. But I don't know of anybody that has one yet.
Chauncey?
It's about 11:35. We'd like to, we're going to shut down this webinar for this morning. I want to thank everybody for coming out and your questions. We'll take some of this stuff back, make notes. We will be putting this webinar on the portal for any of your folks that did not get to listen to it or will not be able to attend at 2 o'clock. We will have a recording of this out there, which will be really fun for them to listen to me, I'm sure. But we're going to stop recording this here in just a minute. If you want to got more questions, you're welcome to come back at 2 o'clock and join the webinar again. Thank you and have a good afternoon.